You are listening to Africa Business Radio. For up-to-date insights on the African business landscape, log on to www.africabusinessradio.com. Your favorite shows are available as podcasts. Download them on our website and mobile app. Africa Business Radio. Towards a profitable Africa.
Alrighty, so we're back. You cannot believe what's going on in the studio. I've got a big stick here and I'm chasing gremlins around and beating the hell out of them. They seem to be crawling in and out of the woodwork and in and out of the PCs and in and out of everything. So our next guest is Bret Rogers. He's the director at Signium in Peru. Lovely, lovely, lovely to have an international guest again. We're chatting about misfits and ill-fitting executives within the workplace. Good morning, Bret. Are you with us?
I am. Yes, I am. How are you doing, Gavin?
I'm well. I'm having to beat producers over the head here and chase sound engineers around. I don't know what the hell's going on, but I imagine in South America, same as Africa, it's not a place for sissies, hey? And we make things up and we make things work.
That's right. You got to make it happen.
That's it. All right, Bret, give us a little bit of an intro. Signium, what do you guys do? Your reason for existence, your specialities.
Well, just to kind of, I heard you kind of questioning about the Signium Peru as a Peru-based firm. We're basically a part of a much larger global executive search and leadership consulting firm.
Right.
It's a very well-known global firm, and basically we specialize in executive search and all types of leadership consulting worldwide.
Fantastic. And then I've been reading this article that you wrote, Misfit and Ill-Fitting Executives. Now, I have seen this happen countless times. It's like introducing a cancer. It is debilitating for a company. From your perspective, can you define an ill-fitting executive, a misfit within the corporate environment or any business environment for that matter?
Yeah, Gavin, it's interesting. The concept you mentioned yourself that you've seen it time and time again. And I have too. And the thing that when I got into HR some time ago is I'm not a career HR person, but I got into it about 12 years ago, and I had seen this earlier. And one of the things I even mentioned in the article is that I've done it myself. And I think when you have that experience by actually, fortunately in my case it was much younger in my career. I had a couple of times when I actually, for inexperience, went ahead and introduced somebody into an organization where it just didn't work out, and it was on my time that I had to decide and say this just isn't happening, and I selected this person for the wrong reason, and I better take action, or they're going to take action about me.
Yeah.
So once I got into HR many years later, I saw it happen, on various occasions, and I just thought, this is something that is going to have traction and may meet the eyes of some of the readers, and it really has. It's hit a chord, definitely. To be able to maybe describe the situation of or describe a misfit. It could be any type. It could be somebody that just, as your earlier interview, is somebody that maybe kind of stretched the truth about their qualifications and just didn't make it, and just from their competencies regarding their speciality, whether it's finance or production or what have you, just might not be there.
Yeah.
And they might not be able to deliver the goods, if you know what I mean. Another, however, which is sometimes more difficult to identify through an interview process, is the fit of that person with the existing team, because that's almost something that you can't tell through an interview process unless you handle it over several weeks. You have a lot of dynamics and interaction with that individual.
Yeah, but no.
And in the article, I point out one of the reasons is that a lot of times these hiring decisions are very confidential, so you don't get to do that, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. And the biggest mistakes that I've seen, and as I said, I've seen it a number of times, comes from an emotional hire as opposed to an intellectual hire. Specifically when it could be related to family members, when it could be related to friends. I think introducing management and leaders within an organization the emotion should be taken out of it. Just because somebody is a family member or your son doesn't necessarily mean they're going to have the same ideals, the same ideology, the same work ethic as you.
Totally agree. I mean, basically, I think what we're getting at, we're taking the direction of the conversation, and this is a great entry, is to talk about diversity, because the diversity of all types actually adds a lot of value to the combination at an executive level. And by hiring someone that we feel more comfortable with because they're either a family member, in the case that you've mentioned, or they're people that think like us, and we feel comfortable with, as you will, that's a deadly zone you're getting into there, because that's many times exactly what you don't want, is to have a copy paste or a carbon copy of yourself in another role. You need to have people thinking differently and challenging all the time if you want to really have a high performance organization.
Yeah, and it also makes the rectification process a hell of a lot more difficult. Trying to fire somebody who's either a friend or a family member or somebody who you feel akin to will create even more chaos and more disruption within the workplace.
Yeah, and especially if it's a family member, then you're talking about something that might even be stronger, could even be stronger ties than a business tie. So then it's even more of a difficult situation for you even to consider. But in the meantime, when you are considering this, as I mentioned again, this is taking it to another part of the article, is that in the meantime the organization is suffering, and then you get into leadership issues and doubt and reputation and all those things that can be discussed, because everyone's watching. Everyone knows this way before you even realize it a lot of times. Except you. Yes, exactly, because you really have your head in the sand and you don't realize, what you've done. People have realized it, and they know it's happening. They know it's happening maybe the day even after that you made the hire, but you're blinded by the whole thing.
And the problem is that there is. I'm trying to think of a specific word, Jay. There's an internal pride that you've got. You will be proven right, even at the expense. I've seen people hire this toxic, ill-fitting, misfit executive, and what used to be a dynamic team starts crumbling, and you see a labor turnover rate that is exceptional, and yet management won't acknowledge the fact that they've made this mistake. How does one go about, acknowledging the fact that, yes, I've made a mistake? How do you, communicate this? How do you go about rectifying your situation?
Well, it depends on how transparent you want to be and how comfortable you are with that. In my opinion, the people in our organizations really want to have honest leaders. And if honesty means that if you have to really, as they say here, they have a local proverb. It's like, maybe you have to eat the frog, comerse el sapo. Uh-huh. It kind of means that, hey, you know what? I have to admit that I made a mistake in front of a lot of people. And you might initially think that is going to damage your reputation. But it turns out that over time, or even when you have to do it, it actually makes your reputation stronger as a leader, because people understand and do forgive you. They will forgive you if you've made a mistake. Now, if you do it every other week, that's another story. But occasionally, you cannot always be right about the talent that you introduce into an organization. I mean, it's impossible to always hire the perfect talent for a perfect fit. I mean, I don't think it exists. So by getting that and actually admitting it, and of course the one thing, Gavin, that's really important is that you first have to decide and maybe verify that this is a mistake. Because the real danger here is that you have one danger is that you've identified a misfit. What you think is a misfit. But then it's a whole other thing. You have to make sure that the person really just won't work, and that this is not just something where you have a couple of people on your team that are maybe scared of this person, that maybe this person is better than them, they have higher qualifications, or is more intelligent, has better decision-making capability, and really they're not just setting the person up to take a fall. So you have to go through all of the steps. It's like having a due diligence decision before you take action, because this is serious. I mean, you're talking about taking an action about someone that you've convinced, in many cases, to leave another job.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, there's a lot involved in this decision.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not uncommon for subordinates to be a little bit bitter when other people are promoted or hired above them, to actually try and sabotage the incoming person's what they do, their work, etc.
That's right. I've seen it a lot. I really have.
Yeah. So, where do you sit down? How do you go about selecting these people? Do you look at certain criteria? Are there IQ tests, EQ tests? Or how do we go about selecting this person that will be the right fit?
That's a really good question. There's a lot of methods. There are psychometrics, there are interview techniques, there are dynamics, and all of them, depending on the level of hire, all different techniques are used. And I think that going to one of them, the psychometrics, I've been to different companies. Some companies don't use them at all, as other companies are heavily dependent on them, and they work. The issue is that their confidence level might be very significant, maybe 70 or 80% significance in terms of accuracy in determining the likelihood of somebody being able to have the smarts, or have the fit, or the strategic capability that the psychometric evaluation provides. But on the other hand, there's another 30% or 20% where it might be incorrect. So that's a pretty big error, potential error.
Yeah, it means 3 out of every 10 people in your company might be wrong.
Exactly. So what do you do there? So then you get into, I mean, that's obviously could never be one pillar of your strategy. The other would be, just competency interviews. Competency interviews are excellent, and that would be another one. And then you look at the history of the person. The history is very difficult to doubt if you verify it. Just like you spoke in your earlier interview, you have to make sure that the references are checked out, that the history of whether it's their schooling or their universities that they attended or the actual jobs that they had are real jobs. I mean, that's pretty basic. Yeah. So that's the second or third. And then I would say another one is extremely important would be to bring the person in and put them through some dynamics, because then you can actually see the person live, how they interact and how they solve problems. So that could be a simulation of giving them a problem to solve under a time-controlled environment, and you see how they act and what kind of suggestions they make based on the issue that you give them to solve. So there's all these things, and then finally, the most important probably is the interview process, where you have, I would say, as many of the executive committee on a very high level hire have a chance to speak with the person and then validate that person as part of, a key part of a future team that they're going to have. Yeah. So all of those things are important.
And you mentioned about checking qualifications and stuff. In South Africa, it is a massive, massive problem, from entry-level positions all the way through to national government ministers. The producer and everybody here always moans at me because I constantly harp on about the fact that having the right people in the right places with the right qualifications is vital for success. But unfortunately, we've got statistically about a 27 to 28% unemployment rate. Realistically, it's closer to 40%. So there is massive fraud, qualification fraud, and misrepresentation. Do you find that a lot where you guys are, in your sphere of influence, where you operate?
Yeah, I have to say, Gavin, it's really, really sad, and it does exist. Just as you mentioned in government, that it happens there. There are some cases here locally in Peru where these things are coming up and they're becoming evident, and you know, people to elected positions are faking even having gone to a university or a school, and they literally make up in some cases the references. I mean, it's really, really sad, and it happens in business too. So what's one of the problems there is that I think that there's some HR teams that could be a little, let's just call it a little bit lazy, and they don't go into making all the checks on those, or sometimes the actual reference process, you have to also kind of look at it very kind of critically in a way, because depending on the culture, it's not likely that a reference gives anything less than a stellar score.
Yeah, exactly.
So, like in this culture here, I would have to say that in the local culture where I live, it's very, very unlikely that a reference would even say somebody has to work on a let's just call it a development opportunity, which we all know is kind of like a word to, or a phrase to kind of mention a weakness. And when they ask you, well, what are some of the weaknesses this person have, or whatever, you say, what you hear normally is that, well, I just can't think of any, you know. So it's very difficult. So you have to give those references, kind of weigh them with a grain of salt. You know, you have to kind of check that out.
I think in certain countries it's actually illegal to give a bad reference. You have to just say no comment or something along those lines.
Yes, that's more likely, yes.
All right, fantastic. Our time has just run away with us. It's 10:55. We're going to have to wrap up. Bret, thank you so much. It was enlightening. Do you want to give your company a bit of a punt? Where can people get hold of you?
Yes, you can get a hold of us globally at signium.com, and our main location is in Chicago, and we're a global firm, and we pride ourselves in finding the best talent worldwide. And so I would definitely suggest that you visit our website at signium.com, and we'll be more than happy to help you out with any of the searches you might have worldwide, or any leadership consulting that we could help you with in all of these issues. Thank you very much, Gavin.
Fantastic. Thank you, Bret. All right, that was Bret Rogers, director at Signium, from the Peru office, head office in Chicago. He's probably in South America because it's safer than Chicago at the moment. People are looking at me there. I'm going to get beaten up one day in the studio. You guys are going to drag me out and kick my butt. Anyway, so we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to be back with Michael Yates. He's a lawyer from Cliff Decker Hoffmeyer, and we're going to be chatting. What are we going to be chatting about? The case for flexi hours. So please don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Africa Biz Radio, Facebook Africa Business Radio, hashtag HRWired. Drop us an email, info@africabusinessradio.com, and don't forget to download our app on the iStore and at Google Play. Then you can take us wherever you are and listen to us and interact. I'm not sure that anybody wants to take me wherever they are. Unless you're going to go rob a bank, then you just threaten them with ABR. They go, here's all of my money, go away. All right, hit it there. Let's take a break.
7 continents, 195 countries, and 7 billion people, all connected by technology. DigiBiz Africa is your link to technology news, trends, developments, and digital innovation. We expose you to game changers and disruptors, role players, and pioneers. Come together right here. We were once strangers, now neighbors. Once secluded, now included. Was divided, now enlightened. We are one, a connected world. Africa Business Radio, towards a profitable Africa.